This is my second project using wood from a Casuarina or Australian pine root ball that my friend Teddy delivered to me at my shop a few weeks ago. When I first saw it, I didn't think there was much there, but I have to say, I really love this wood. Come on. This is that second blank that I cut out of that Australian pine root ball stump, and I'm just starting to turn it to round here, and it is quite a interesting wood to work with. It's got a real odor to it when you turn it, and it's not a real pleasant odor. I don't know if that's the natural smell of the wood or perhaps it's just from being in the water all this time, and it's just got kind of a rotty bog smell to it. But as you turn it, it gets better, and when it gets sealed, it's fine. So I'm really intrigued by this natural edge. I've got it on a faceplate here, and I'm gonna try to get it to round, and I'm gonna see if I can't find a tenon on the bottom, and I'm gonna try to leave some of this natural edge in this piece. I think I'm going to mortise this piece, and I've got some really significant insets in this, so this is going to end up being a pretty heavy wall bowl. I've got it in the basic form that I like for now, and so I'm going to work on some of these punky areas here and get some CA in there to try to stabilize. Also have a pretty good little knot right here that I'm a little worried about, so I'm going to feed that real well here and make sure that that remains stable as I continue to turn this. Yeah, I'm really feeding this liberally here, especially these holidays. Some of the wood is a little bit soft inside there, and I'm pretty much going to cover this whole thing, get it down into all the pores, and then I'll do some light sanding here, well, heavy sanding, and then I'll be ready to flip it around and start hollowing. So I put a bunch of CA onto the punky parts, and then I used the gouges here to kind of scrape that off. And interestingly, the bowl had already moved around a good deal, so I had to kind of return it to this shape. And I'll have to do this again. And so just to keep this from drying too quickly, I'm using a lacquer sealer here, just to try to slow down the rate of drying here as much as I can, because I don't want any big cracks to show up. But I've got high hopes for this piece. I've got a couple of areas here in these cavities that are just a little bit deeper than I'd like. I measured this at about 3/8 or 3/16, I should say, of an inch deep. I don't think it'll go through, but I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of good old Dunkin' Donuts coffee grounds here and build these areas up just a little bit. That way I won't get a hole when I'm hollowing this out. So just dripping a little CA on these coffee grounds, and they should disappear into this wonderful black cavity here. And we're going to let that dry 10 minutes or so before we flip it. This is the first time I'd ever used a faceplate. Oops. Well, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Alright, back and forth with the scraper here, and I've got this thing down to about 5/8, well, not 5/8, I'd say a ½ inch roughly, well, maybe 5/8 down here, and I feel like that's about as far as I want to go with this. It's a little thinner at the top, but the transition feels good on it. Did some rough sanding on this thing, and I tried out this little gadget that I received in the mail here. This is from Colin Lathe and of CL Wood Turning in the UK, and he did a video where he made this thing, or one like it, and he watched me struggling in one of my videos with getting a good finish and sent this thing all the way over from the UK for me, and I just had a chance to try it out, and I gotta say, I'm amazed. You gotta see this thing. So that was a 240 grit, and it really did a remarkable job of getting some of the sanding marks out that I had in here that I was going to have to work out by hand. And it really leaves a nice finish, and this thing spins like crazy as fast as you want it to, and it really takes some of the lines or the linear scores out of the work. So Colin, really a neat little device here, and I thank you so much for sending it to me. And I'm going to put a link to a video that Colin did about making this thing in the notes for this video. So be sure and watch that. It's a really cool little device, and if you wanted one, you could make it up yourself in your shop. I sanded this to 400 grit, and boy, is it nice and smooth to the touch. I'm going to go ahead and flip it onto the cold jaws and take off the bottom and get rid of that mortise. These cold jaws make me a little nervous, so I will backstop this while I turn down this extra meat on the bottom. I've got the bowl sanded down to 400, and boy does it look nice. I'm going to do some wet sanding after I get my brand applied, and I'll go ahead and start applying the lacquer, I believe. I don't recommend inspecting your wood turnings with a magnifying glass. You can really drive yourself crazy trying to get all the little imperfections out of it. So I think all the big tool marks are gone at this point. I don't see too much in the way of sanding issues. I had a few tiny little cracks come up, but I almost think they were just a part of the wood. There's a knot here, and then there's a couple cracks on either side, so I had to stabilize those. But other than that, I think we're ready to lacquer. So I'm going to be using my Deft rattle can lacquer. I'll be putting 2 or 3 coats on the outside and on the inside, and then I'll be wet sanding. And several coats after that, more wet sanding, more coats. Well, this one's done. I've got about 10 coats of lacquer on this, maybe 12, wet sanding in between. I'm pretty happy with it. I really love these features here. This was on the outside of the root ball here, and so there was a lot more irregularity to the wood. So it's kind of an interesting piece to turn. a lot more texture in it as well. Lots of little, almost looks like holes, but they're not really, and they have a very light color to them. And I really love this wood. I've got 3 more blanks, and I'm looking forward to working with this some more. I think in the next piece I'm going to put more of a defined foot. One of the things I'm learning is that if you have a lacquered piece, you want to make sure you've got a place to set it so that you don't mar the lacquer. And so this piece here, just from setting it on tables and so forth, I've developed a bit of a scuffed ring. It's very hard to see probably in the video, but it's starting to happen. So over time it's going to get dinged up down there. But this was fun, and I hope you'll stay tuned and watch the next video I do on this. Well, this is Jimmie saying thanks for watching. Have a great day.